Hey Kentucky, this is Mary Jo Perino. Tonight, Governor Bevin agrees to change up his pension plan. Coach Cal talks about his new solidified roster. And Wukash Orbzut goes looking for Bigfoot in Anderson County. All that and more right now on Hey Kentucky. Welcome into Hey Kentucky, presented by Wendy's. I'm Mary Jo Perino, and once again for Matt Jones. Josh Foreman is my co-host tonight.
Hello.
Freshly tanned off the sunshiny.
A little bit of vacation does a body good.
Yeah, you got some of that vitamin C
That's right.
and vitamin D. All right, let's start with Frankfort, where Governor Bevin has agreed to make changes to the pension plan that could be the subject of a special session. Bevin has worked for weeks to try to build support for his proposal in the Republican-led legislature. He didn't indicate when he might call lawmakers back to the state capitol, but said he has agreed to revisions in his plan, which aims to provide relief for some state-funded agencies struggling with surging retirement payments. Meanwhile, Bevin addressed the controversy stirred up by his outgoing Lieutenant Governor, Janine Hampton. The governor says he had no involvement in the decision to fire Hampton's staff member, one which prompted her to tweet about seeking prayers to work against so-called dark forces. Josh, let's start with the pension plan. Bevin has not said what concessions he's made or what changes have been made, but we do know something's got to be done by July 1st.
Something has to be done because the pressure that's going to be put on these small agencies if this doesn't get passed is just too great, and everybody knows that. But nobody seems to know what concessions he's making, and the lawmakers and Bevin don't seem to be on the same page about getting the votes and getting it passed. So
they haven't been for a while.
It feels like it's heading for a showdown or some sort of last second, resolution that nobody's really happy with.
It'll be an 11th hour agreement that, like you said, nobody's happy with.
That's how it feels at this point.
I don't know. All right, staying in Frankfort, Secretary of State Allison Lundergan Grimes says she is unable to certify some of the results from last month's primary. Grimes blames the difficulties on the recently passed legislation that limits her power, but the Senate Majority Leader calls that beyond absurd. Grimes' office says there are dozens of discrepancies across 20 counties, although no election outcomes will be changed as a result. The election board is set to meet again later in the week to try to clear up the problem. Josh, is this sour grapes a little bit from Allison Lundergan Grimes, having some of the power stripped away, or what do you make of it?
It can feel that way, I guess. I think, wanting to make sure that your elections are above board and that everything happens, up to code, so to speak, is a perfectly reasonable goal. I've got no reason, no reason to be upset about that. And as long as they're not going to have long, contentious arguments about who got elected and who didn't, I don't see the harm in doing your due diligence.
So the results won't be changed in this case, but I'm sure moving forward, if there's a super close election and some of these discrepancies could cause a real problem, it's better to get them fixed now.
Hopefully you take care of that with this review so that you can sort of anticipate them and it doesn't end up causing problems in future elections.
All right, a new investigative report questions the practices of Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, who is the wife of Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, as you know. The New York Times reports that in October 2017, Chao's office made a series of requests ahead of her first visit to China as a Trump cabinet member, asking federal officials to coordinate travel arrangements for at least one family member and to include relatives in meetings with government officials. So the problem is Chao's family business has deep interest in China and a connection to the steel products at the center of the deepening trade war between China and the U.S. Ultimately, the request was denied for ethical reasons, as it should have been. But Chao says that had nothing to do with her family's business. I just don't buy it.
No, and the person who called attention to this was a staffer who worked at the embassy in China, and they deal with these kind of requests from visiting diplomats all the time. And, Elaine Chao herself has been a Secretary of Labor under another president. She knows how this stuff works. So to make this request to put family members who stand to gain financially from these business discussions in those positions, I think they did the right thing in not granting the request.
They absolutely did the right thing. But to now backtrack and say, well, I had nothing to do with that, I just can't imagine that it didn't have a financial...
Then why were they there?
Yeah, I just want Cousin Eddie to be in this meeting here.
Yeah, has a 50% stake in the business, but just for decoration. I just want him to be there.
All right, a Lexington mother protested the decision by school leaders to exclude her son from walking at yesterday's high school graduation for Tates Creek High School. Now, the story's complicated. It's spelled out in the Lexington Herald-Leader, which also talked to Fayette County schools about the exclusion of Joseph Boggs, who is deaf and visually impaired. His mother admits his behavior was altered by a head injury suffered in a car crash 4 years ago, but she does not consider him a threat to anyone's safety. While not providing a specific reason for the decision, the school principal said, quote, "Issues of health and safety would lead me to consider excluding a student from graduation." Now, Joseph's mother notes that he was previously involved in an incident with a school officer who mistook something he said as a threat. He's made headlines for speaking in the Capitol Rotunda and for receiving national and local recognition for overcoming his disabilities. Josh, I just feel like something could have been done to make it possible for him to walk.
Yeah, this is what Matt likes to say. This is one of those situations where everything can be true at once. And I think it's true that, this kid does seem remarkable and has spoken, like you said, to great acclaim at the Capitol. But it's also true that apparently there were some threats made, some things with his behavior, which the reason for that, notwithstanding if the car crash caused it, I understand that can happen. But it feels like, everybody's kind of got a stake and they're a little bit right. The school has the right to say, look, if you've made these threats and your behavior has warranted it, we can withhold this. But it's a big deal. High school graduation is a big deal. I do feel bad in general for the kid, and it just feels like a no-win situation.
Right. And to have gone through what he's gone through and to get that diploma
there,
is probably, a significant achievement in his life.
Absolutely.
And stuff. So, okay. Turning to UK basketball now, some really good stuff. Coach Cal held his first media availability today since the NBA draft deadline has come and gone. John Calipari says that while he's happy with the current layout of the roster, and why wouldn't he be, since key players decided to pass on the NBA, but he'd certainly be open to bringing in one more player if it benefited both sides.
I'm really happy with where we are right now. If there's anything that could help us and also help the player, that I would consider that.
You and Cal have been in the sunshine together, it looks like. All right, now the biggest available piece for the Kentucky coaching staff to consider is, of course, Virginia Tech transfer Kerry Blackshear Jr., who did withdraw his name from the NBA draft as well. I'd love to land him, but Josh, where do you like where this team stands now, with or without Blackshear?
Yeah, I think I like it right now. I'd love it with Blackshear on board. That's how I feel. I mean, to me, he's a big difference maker. He's obviously competed against high-level competition, and I don't think it was any accident that Cal just happened to mention that he might take a player if such a person were available.
And it would be good for both sides. That
Right.
might be wonderful. But EJ coming back, Nick Richards coming back. Cal said today he expects a breakout season from Nick and a breakout season from Ashton Hagans. I don't know if it's going to happen with Nick Richards, but Ashton, I can definitely see.
Yeah, you got to feel good about having him back in the driver's seat for a second season. Absolutely.